Well, good morning, good afternoon to all you East Coasters. Welcome to the monthly edition of the Humpday Hangout, sponsored by Fire Engineering Magazine and Key Hose. My name is Clark Lamping. I'm a captain here at Clark County Fire Department in Las Vegas. And to my left, sharing my screen right here, is a friend of mine, a co-captain, Evan Hanna. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Evan Hanna with the Clark County Fire Department. I've been here for approximately 23 years, and I think this subject matter is right up my alley, so hopefully we'll have some good discussions, and we'll be able to answer some questions for you guys and learn a lot of things as well.
All right, great. Thank you, Evan. And also sharing the screen with us today is Stephen Hamilton from Fort Jackson area. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Stephen?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Steve Hamilton. I'm a lieutenant with the Fort Jackson Fire Department in Columbia, South Carolina, and I am a senior reserve deputy with the Richland County Sheriff's Department, which is also in Columbia, South Carolina. I've been in the fire service for 19 years. I've been a sheriff's deputy for 5, and I come from a long line of law enforcement and fire service careers within my family. And I grew up in a law enforcement household. My father was a police officer for 36 years, so I still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Stephen. Pleasure to have you on today. It is summertime, so all of our usual suspects are off on vacation. So it's just going to be the 3 of us today. Captain Bill Guston might be joining us. He is on duty today. He might be popping in and out, but he's extremely busy at work, so chances are slim we're going to see his beautiful face on this edition of the Humpday Hangout. So once again, we're sponsored by Key Fire Hose. That's keyfire.com. They're always very, very generous to us here and with Fire Engineering Magazine. Please visit their website, keyfire.com, and check out their products. A little later, I'd like to tell a story about some experience I've had with Key Fire Hose. But for now, we're going to get right into our conversation. And our topic this month is going to be the relationship between police and fire agencies, both positive and negative. I'm sure we've all seen these videos of fire officers being arrested on the scene of a traffic accident. And also we've seen some videos of cooperative efforts between fire and police on active shooter events and things like that. So we're going to talk today about those kind of relations. And first of all, I'd like to ask Steve here, because you are a firefighter and a police officer, what are some of your experiences, Steve, that you've had negatively with traffic accidents in South Carolina?
Well, it's no secret that South Carolina is ranked as one of the states with the worst drivers. So we do have a large amount of traffic accidents daily across the state. Working with the law enforcement personnel here in the Columbia area, Richland County Sheriff's Department and Columbia, they have a very good relationship as far as that goes. However, there are incidents where fire personnel will shut down a roadway, and unfortunately, due to the amount of incidents where fire and EMS personnel are injured on the scene of a highway accident, it's almost as if the gut reaction is just shut down the roadway. We'll just shut down the roadway, do what we need to do, and then we'll open it back up. The negative aspect with that is when you shut down a roadway, you back up traffic for miles upon miles upon miles. And I don't remember what the statistical numbers are, but there are statistics that say for X amount of time that the roadway is shut down equals X amount of miles that the traffic is backed up. And I think what a lot of fire and EMS personnel don't understand is that law enforcement doesn't want to open the road quickly because they're afraid of complaints, or they're afraid that there's going to be issues with traffic, and it's going to cause all these people to call and say, hey, you know, traffic's bad and help me out and things like that. You get a lot of fender benders when you start backing up traffic. And for every fender bender, that's a report, that's damage to someone's property, and you may back up traffic by shutting down a roadway for an extended period of time, and you could end up having 5, 6, 7 different fender benders. Well, now law enforcement's going to be tied up for several hours trying to clear all those fender benders, and you've just caused damage to people's personal property. So what we need to try to express is you absolutely should shut the roadway down when you need to, but make a very good assessment of whether you really need to or not. And if you can move a car with the winch of on your bumper of your apparatus or something to get a lane open and keep speeds of those vehicles coming through to a minimum, then try to do that and work together and not fight each other back and forth. And as you alluded, there are several instances where fire officers have been arrested at the scene of traffic accidents. We don't need to do that. We need to have a good, positive working relationship with one another.
And I absolutely agree, Stephen. And also, if we don't have winches on our apparatus, let's at least expedite the equipment to the scene that needs to get there to move the vehicles. So tow trucks, in our case, things like that. A lot of times, after the incident's already occurred, we're there, police are there, then they dispatch tow trucks while the traffic's already backed up. I think tow trucks could potentially be on the original dispatch to get those vehicles there quickly and get those roadways open. What do you think?
Absolutely. There's been some incidences where I've been working in the fire department and I requested a tow truck, and I got grief from the law enforcement personnel. They're like, well, you can't request a tow truck. We have to request it. We have to go there. We have to make an assessment. I'm like, I know if we need a tow truck. We had an incident with a vehicle that was waterlocked. Drove through waterlocked the engine. It's not going anywhere. They're blocking the roadway. In addition to there being a pretty big storm going on right now and water building up. So we requested a tow truck, and they're like, well, you can't request a tow truck. Why can't I request a tow truck? Fix that dialogue back and forth where it doesn't matter who requests a tow truck. If you look at a situation and say, hey, we're going to need a tow truck, send me a tow truck. And if you're wrong, treat it like any other resource. You turn it around, you say sorry, and next time I'll try to make a better judgment. Don't leave that authority or decision just to one entity. That doesn't make any sense.
Have your agency since corrected that problem?
We have. We had a long conversation about it, and it's like, you can get into the brass tacks of, the engine got there, established command, and is requesting a resource to mitigate their emergency. So under ICS, I'm just requesting a resource. And once you get that understanding that, hey, yes, this may be a law enforcement event right now, but law enforcement's not there. Fire is. Fire has established ICS, and command is requesting a resource. You send them their resource.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. As far as Clark County goes, I don't know what you think, Evan. We've had individual problems with Highway Patrol, with our police department, with the certain fire officers, but I think for the most part we've got a great relationship with our agencies, Highway Patrol, Metropolitan Police Department, and all the different fire departments in town. I think we have a pretty good working relationship. I'm not aware of anyone being arrested on scene for anything like that, and we have a good understanding about get these roadways open. Yes, it is drilled in our heads. It is the company officer's duty to protect the scene, to protect his people working on the scene, but also we have to have a little common sense as well. We don't have to just show up and shut the whole roadway down. We can work safely. We can position our apparatus in such a way that we can protect the scene and still leave lanes open. Now, myself as a company officer, I am very, very aware being on scene of a traffic accident. In fact, I think nothing scares me more on this job than working on a highway. Having my men on the side of a highway with vehicles going by 30, 40, 50 miles an hour right next to my head, that is probably the scariest thing for me on this job. So I am absolutely paying attention to the traffic at all times. I will not be doing patient care. If we need some more patient care, I will bring extra resources in. But for my duty as a company officer, I am watching traffic all of the time, ensuring that my people are operating in a safe area and letting them know, don't step over this line, that's the traffic line, things like that. So I don't agree with completely shutting down roadways unless it's necessary. What do you think, Captain Hanna?
I think there's a time and a place. We all have our stories, you know, the positives and the negatives. You know, we have different cultural backgrounds, but again, that's more of an educational issue where we can educate each other on our roles and responsibilities when we arrive at these, you know, specific incidents. So do whatever works within your jurisdiction, try and make those necessary changes, and move in a positive direction to help your relationship, you know, cultivate between law enforcement and fire.
Right.
Well, on the flip to that, you don't want to. I don't want to make the impression that, you know, we need to adapt. We also need to engage law enforcement and make them understand, you know, you're a police officer. You pull people over on a road every day. You're out in traffic every day, and because you're out moving around on a roadway, you have a better sense of awareness and a better sense of comfort in that environment than the fire department's going to have. And understand where we're coming from and why we do what we do, and support it. That way, when we pull up to an incident and law enforcement is there before us and they see, okay, they're going to have to cut this patient out of this car, I know they're going to shut the roadway down. Because anytime we're putting tools on the ground, unless you have 5-6 lane highway, you're going to be shutting the roadway down. So I know they're going to do that just because I've engaged them and had conversations with them. So I'm going to start to build a traffic plan to maybe route cars another way and start that process off before we shut the roadway down. And then, hey, are you guys going to shut the roadway down? Yeah, we're shutting the roadway down. Oh, and then scrambling to try to figure something out. Increase the dialogue. Have them come and maybe be a part of your training. Have them come and be a part of when you cut cars up, so that they understand, you know, this is not a quick thing. This is going to take a minute. And once they have that understanding, maybe they won't be so quick to judge or quick to be aggressive about opening the roadway up if they know what we have to do.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I've got an idea. When we show up on scene and law enforcement's already there, why don't we ask them where they want us to place our apparatus instead of tell them where we're going to place our apparatus? And if we're not happy with their answer, maybe we can have a real quick conversation instead of just bulldozing in there and telling them this is how it's going to be. All right?
Yeah, exactly. Because when we, you know, as law enforcement officers, we don't really take too well at being told what to do, especially when we're wearing a uniform. Understand that I tell you what to do. That's the culture. That's the way you're trained. You're trained to take control of the environment. So when someone else starts telling you what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, that starts to have that cyclical, you know, defense mechanism where you start getting argumentative with people, and all that works. And I think that's great. I think that's a great suggestion. In lieu of trying to get with one another and train in advance and try to have conversations about things in advance. If we can train together and stop looking at each other as, well, we'll train for active shooter and that's it. No, train on everything. Train on EMS calls. Train on fire calls. You know, we've done a very good job of saying, hey, this big red thing that has water running through it on the fire scene, I don't want cars running that over. And cops are very, very cognizant of that, and they're very understanding of the fact that when hoses are on the ground, cars running over fire hoses is bad, and we don't want to do that. So let's just take that the step further and start training and talking with one another a little bit more about what our duties and responsibilities are, both for the cops when we respond to their incidents that are law enforcement intensive, and when they respond to our incidents where our incidents are fire intensive. And that's all we really need to do is communicate with one another.
Yeah, we've got. Have you ever heard of the TIMS program, Steve? Traffic Incident Management.
No.
Why don't you speak about that, Evan?
It's a national program that's collaboration between law enforcement, other public safety agencies to go ahead and improve our safety and efficiency on the highways. It's been adopted nationally through the Department of Transportation and is being pushed out to local fire departments, all throughout the country, so we can go ahead and learn better ways to operate on the highways and roadways without doing exactly what you were just saying, impeding traffic for long periods of times. Correct ways to spot your apparatus, distances from the vehicles where our work area is located at, and then having those conversations with law enforcement on when and how long we're going to be there, and that when we can start opening up the highway to let these the people that are sitting there for hours to get past and open those roadways. So it's coming to your community soon. So be on the lookout for it.
That sounds great. That sounds awesome.
Online? It was an online class?
It was an online class. We have some people that have gone through the Train the Trainer. It's done through our monthly training on our computer systems that are pushed out to our personnel. So we got it from Highway Patrol, and it's going out absolutely.
That's excellent. That's great.
And it has anything to do with the incident command system? Is that any of that information in that?
I think it's a baseline, just managing the scene. If you wanted to throw incident management, as terminology in there. But again, that opens up the gate for police and fire to go ahead and start working together, because it has that keyword incident management. And that's one of those things that law enforcement and fire department agencies across the nation need to work better on. Because let's face it, law enforcement as a whole, with incident management, ICS, whatever you want to call it, command and control, they are not as well versed as the fire departments are. We use it every day. Law enforcement uses it every day, but they have a different take because they work as a single resource. And on fire department crews, we work more as a team. And so the concept has been pushed down us much earlier, through Fire Scope and the wildland industry, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and just on. But it's coming again too. I think a lot of law enforcement agencies are improving their knowledge base with ICS, and we're a great resource, like you had mentioned in your story before the webinar there, Steve, that your department is moving in a direction where you're training together and doing other things to help your counterparts in law enforcement to get better at ICS, and using the fire department personnel as a support system to help them through those incidents and guide them on how to use the incident command system, better and more efficiently.
Sure, and I think there may be a disconnect. I think sometimes the fire service a little harsh on the law enforcement guys, a little harsh on them about ICS, and hey, you got to establish command, and I can tell you, it's difficult to do that, as you alluded to. Police usually work as a single resource, but even when we start to bring other cars or other patrol units into whatever the incident may be, ICS is still a pretty difficult thing to do. It was probably about a year ago. I was involved in a high-speed pursuit, a short high-speed pursuit. My partner and I got behind a car that was stolen, and when we went to pull it over, they took off, and they did what we call bush bomb. They jumped out of the vehicle, and the vehicle went down a hill and crashed. And my partner went after one guy, and I went after the other guy, and I apprehended my guy pretty quick, and his guy went and hid behind a house. But at no point in time was establishing command or ICS even thought of. A K-9 unit came immediately. We had a couple other patrol cars come immediately, and they started to set up a perimeter. The dog got on the ground, and the incident was over in less than 10 minutes. In less than 10 minutes, the emergent phase of the incident was over, and that was because most of these incidents for law enforcement are over pretty quick. And by the time it was said and done, we had 7 law enforcement officers there, and at no point in time did anybody establish command or do ICS or anything like that. It's difficult to get the road officer into that role. Now, that being said, when you have a barricaded subject and you're bringing out SWAT and negotiators and things like that, my sheriff's department has an incident management team. So very much like having an assignment like narcotics or SWAT or community action, these individuals, they do their road patrol, but as an extra duty, they're part of an incident management system. So when there's an incident that occurs where we need to set up ICS for a long incident, they'll show up. They bring in this trailer, and everybody sets up incident command, and that's how it's done. So it's not that they're incapable of doing it, it's that in a lot of incidents it's not practical.
Right, right. Let me interrupt real quick. We just had another brother of ours join the conversation, Daryl Liggins from Oakland, California. He's home in his pajamas today because he's not feeling good. And being from Oakland, California, I'm sure he's got a lot of experience with the police department. So he's going to chime in with some of his relations between fire and police. Why don't you introduce yourself, brother?
Hi, how are you? I'm Daryl Liggins. I'm a lieutenant with the Oakland, California Fire Department. This is my 23rd year in the fire service. I've been with Oakland since '99. And yeah, we deal with police, almost, daily. A lot of times when people are thinking of the police, they're thinking of just their local agency. But I just jotted down a few of the different agencies we deal with. And it's not just the city of Oakland. Many departments are dealing with a lot of different authorities. Just in our city, we have the Oakland Police Department. We have the Alco Sheriff's Department. And the Sheriff's Department deals more with the courts, the transit system, the bus line that's there. We deal with BART PD. And if anyone followed, we had a shooting that turned into quite a big deal in our city involving BART PD. We have the California Highway Patrol, the Postal Police. We deal with railroad authorities, and then we also deal with the federal agencies such as Department of State, FBI, and ATF. And I think I've had incidents with all of them. And anyway, I was listening to the discussion just slightly right before logging on. So anyway, Stephen, I haven't met you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Daryl.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you,
traffic accidents.
I got a question for you, Daryl. That's a lot of different police agencies. All right. How often do you get together and train on incidents, train on ICS, just do routine training with all your agencies in the Oakland area, in the Bay Area?
Well, as a company officer, I can't say that we do at our level. We have a emergency operations center that our battalion chiefs and administration deal with on a higher level. And over the years, we've had a lot of incidents that involved, we had the Oscar Grant incident. He was the young man that was shot on the BART platform, and that turned into different types of rioting and things like that almost weekly. We had Occupy Oakland. I think a lot of cities dealt with the Occupy groups, and that was also, some weekly protest. And that operations center was open during those whole times with our chief's staff as well as some federal agencies and our police force, where they monitor, radio traffic and social media and things like that during those incidents. So I think we've trained by fire maybe more than formal training, but on the ground at my level, we just deal with working with the PD in our division.
All right, good. How about next? I'd like to move into some of the things we're doing here in Clark County, and I'm sure it's going really popular across the country. It's these active shooter events. And we learned so much from the previous events, like in Columbine High School, when all these injured kids were in there, and we didn't administer any EMS to them for hours and hours and hours, waiting for the building to be cleared. So in Clark County, we really have done a lot of work recently on improving relations and working together with our PD for these specific type of incidents. And this is why I brought Captain Hanna in with me because he is kind of the liaison between fire and police for some of these incidents. I'd like for him to speak about what we're doing here in Clark County with our different agencies. Go ahead, Cap.
Okay, so what we've done here is we're like a lot of other agencies, throughout the country where we all have written, looked at the white paper, Hartford consensus, all the top documents that go ahead and lead us in the direction, to go ahead and formulate a plan to address any instance with a hostile element. We chose not to really just develop an active shooter policy. We decided to construct a hostile operations manual. It deals with any element that's hostile element. It can be an active shooter. It can be somebody walking around with a bomb, with a knife. Doesn't matter. Then we also have a CBRN E component, and we also have fire as a weapon. And all of these are their own individual policies and procedures on how we're going to handle those. But in addition to that, we're moving in a direction where we'd like to have one multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional plan. It'd be like an evacuation plan for New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. It's an emergency evacuation plan. PD has their roles, fire has their roles, school district, hotels, police, everything. So we're going to move in that direction. I do want to touch on one subject, Steve, that you had brought up when you were addressing command and control. ICS is not dragging a trailer out or sitting in the front seat of a car not doing anything. We're teaching law enforcement that you can chase somebody down the street behind the wheel of a car, you can be chasing after them with a gun in your hand, and you can still be in command. It's informal command. You don't need to go ahead and have all the forms and charts and everything, but you do it every day. And we're under the impression that you guys kind of understand that. We're just trying to push you in the right direction. And fire department personnel know this because we work on informal command structure every day. So that's really kind of the biggest obstacle that we feel that law enforcement is overlooking, is you already do it. You just need to have a name for it. And that's what we're trying to push. So our active shooter policy, hostile MCI policy, whatever you like, whatever name you want to brand on it, it's a multi-pronged approach. It consists of policy development, training with all of our agencies, from the university police, school police, our local PDs in our adjacent neighboring cities, as well as the FBI, the military. They're all part of this plan. Every single fire agency, 6 fire agencies in southern Nevada, consisting of 2,000 firefighters and approximately 8,000 law enforcement personnel. We've all come together and agreed that this is a plan that works for us. May not work in Florida, may not work in Oakland. It works for us here in southern Nevada. So, and then the largest component is that personal relationship. Fostering and creating those relationships. So just like you said, Steve, is that when I go on scene, I see Steve. We have a conversation on how to go ahead and develop an incident action plan the best way, whether it's a traffic accident, an active shooter, a barricade situation. We're working on a coordinated plan together, and everybody's in the know. Communication is key.
And like you said, that law enforcement does do, as you alluded to, the informal command, and I think part of that is for the fire service to let them know, hey, that's okay. You don't have to stop and say, I'm Unit 423 is establishing command. This is where I'm at. You don't need to do all that. Law enforcement, the way things work is, if I pull a car over for a violation, or I conduct some type of traffic stop, that's mine. That's my traffic stop. And I'm not going to have somebody who's higher ranking than me come in and tell me what to do on my traffic stop. He's going to show up and say, hey, what do you need? And automatically into a support role. So, when you look at formalized ICS, you look at the NIMS things, it's a command statement. You establish command, you announce your location, your incident action plan. And when you start trying to tell law enforcement, hey, this is what you need to do, they're looking at you like you got 3 heads. Like, I don't have time to do that. So as you said, saying that, hey, that's perfectly fine to do that, you're chasing somebody, and this happens when you start to chase somebody. You're calling out what they're wearing, what direction they're going in, and say, hey, I need a car at 5th and Main. I need a car over here to try to start setting up a perimeter. This is the direction we're going. That stuff happens all the time. We just need to let them know, hey, you're doing command, we're just not calling it that, and that's okay. You're still doing it. You're just, as you said, it's informal.
So what we did in Las Vegas is we created an ICS for law enforcement curriculum. It's our audience is just like us. It has a lot of videos. It's a short program. The print is really big. We got pictures and everything, and we do just that. We tell them the difference between formal and informal command. We give them different types of scenarios. We do tabletops with them and run it at an ICS 200, 220 level, because the stigma associated with ICS is that it's ICS 300, 400 when you start busting out charts and you have 214s and 204s and all this stuff that more than likely Clark and I and any other captain, unless you're on an IMT team or an IST team through the government, you're not going to use that. On the streets, we use ICS 200, 220. That's it. So that's what we really want to go ahead and push the message to law enforcement that this is how it's done. And again, be that support system for them. And then when it does build up to a larger incident, a barricade, a SWAT standoff, again, we're there. We can go ahead and be their scribe, organize their incident for you, and do all that. But you chasing a car and giving direction and doing that, you're command. You're telling people where to go, what to do. You're command. So we really need to go ahead and get into, start from the top down and the bottom up simultaneously. Our goal is to get into the next academy and start teaching officers from the onset, you know, from the very incipient phase of their career, that this is ICS and this is how you do it. And then we're teaching the older people, you know, that are kind of phasing out, the chiefs, the captains, the lieutenants, you know, on the law enforcement side, hey, we're here as a resource. You know, your counterpart is here, a battalion chief, a lieutenant, a captain is here and has the skill set to go and help you run an incident. Should be large-scale incident. Active shooter, we've had one here, you know, Colorado, they've been struck by lightning 3 times. So, I mean, it's one of those things where if you can't do it on an everyday basis on the smaller calls and understand, you know, the foundation of ICS, it'll never work on a large incident. It'll be a catastrophic failure. So we really need to build that muscle memory, and that's what we're trying to work on here in Las Vegas.
And that's great. And when you link in the fire element, that really fosters that relationship. And you know, you have somebody that can whisper into his ear, hey, do you think we should go from informal to formal now? Do you think we should do that? You can whisper that into somebody's head, and the light bulb clicks on. Oh yeah, we need to step back and start doing some formal stuff. So that's really good. That's great.
I'm going to take this opportunity right now for a commercial break. We have to plug Key Fire Hose again, keyfire.com. Sponsor this program and all of our Humpday Hangouts here at Fire Engineering. And I just have a real quick story about Key Fire Hose. We were simulating one of our hotels. We were simulating that we had a full catastrophic standpipe failure. And so we were going to take this hose and see how much hose we could stretch vertically up the side of a building. We chose this building. It was 23 stories, 227 feet tall. We had this hose from Key Fire Hose. It was called the Big 10. And we stretched hose from the ground 227 feet up the building and put it on the roof, secured it on the roof, and then we flowed 60 psi. We got about 220 GPM out of this hose, hanging completely vertically 227 feet in the air. And I got some numbers. My numbers could be wrong, but this hose weighs 183 pounds full of water in a stick of hose. We marked all the couplings before we did it, and all of us on scene were expecting catastrophic hose failure because no one on scene had ever done a stretch that high before. And lo and behold, we flowed that for 7 minutes. No failure, no slippage out of the coupling for that Key Fire Hose Big 10. Every single person, experienced fire officers, experienced firefighters on scene were completely amazed that we were capable of doing this. So as far as an officer, tactically, keep that in your toolbox, and this key fire hose stood up to the test. So once again, Key Fire Hose, sponsor of our program, and it's in the commercial. How about you,
I'll
Daryl?
say I saw the video of that fire, and it made Clark County look top shelf firefighters. That standpipe failed, and they recovered quickly, hoisting hose up the side of the building. That was really good. We were talking about active shooters. One thing that I think is extremely important with these incidents that start off as a police matter and turn into, you know, multiple patients, or starts off as maybe a patient and is turning into more of a police matter, is to really have a unified command. We have the ability to listen to our police on our radios, but we can't listen to the Fireground channel and the police at the same time, so it's important that we have a chief officer at the command post with the police so we can monitor what is going on both sides, because unlike most of our operations, just like a fire operation, we have one goal, you know, contain the fire, put it out, or we're treating multiple patients at a vehicle accident. But here the police have an objective, we have an objective, and we have to communicate to our own troops on the ground of exactly what needs to be done and why, and have somebody at the command post monitoring what's going on. We had a active shooter incident at, it was called Okios, still is Okios University, very small place. 7 people were killed and 3 injured. The first person to the scene was a engine company for a reported person outside bleeding, unknown medical. They were told to stage until an officer got there. And when an officer got there, and their dispatch center is getting calls that we're completely unaware of, that there was someone inside, you know, shooting. But as we started getting more patients, we had engine companies showing up, and by then the chief officer being able to talk to those companies and let them know what's going on, so we didn't assume that it was just some people outside, you know, bleeding that need to be treated for some unknown reason. But yeah, a lot, you know, we often think about schools when it's these active shooter things. It used to be post offices, but now we're thinking of military bases also, but it can happen anywhere. You know, we've had many incidents where multiple people were shot, and it wasn't an active shooter incident. I mentioned staging. Do both of you guys have a staging policy before your engine companies could go in for an assault or shooting, stabbing, some violent incident?
Yes, we do. In our policy that we have, which is the hostile mass casualty incident policy, the focal point of our policy, the foundation of our policy, is command and control, and we broke it up into tiers. We have tier 1, tier 2, and 4 being obviously the worst, where it includes, you know, immediate danger to firefighters, civil unrest, very large-scale incidents, multiple shooters still on the loose. The term active shooter is certainly, you know, defined in different ways amongst the press and public safety officials. That someone with a gun that has shot somebody and is walking around with a gun does not make them an active shooter. You're looking at someone who is in a target-rich environment who is shooting people continuously until they go ahead and, you know, statistically they either kill themselves, or when confronted by law enforcement officers, law enforcement takes it into their own hands. And so, you know, staging is definitely recommended in some of our in our 3rd and 4th tier, but we give the company officers on scene the ability to go ahead and make that determination if they're going to go in and potentially treat, if they do get a call like you said, Daryl, you know, unknown problem, person down bleeding. if they feel that their situational awareness is keen enough where they don't have to put their crew in, harm's way a little bit, but not too much, enough to go ahead and do that risk versus benefit analysis and get that person out of there and get them to a safe refuge so they can go ahead and treat them, then that's what they're going to do. That's your call, that's Clark's call, that's Steve's call. So it's just, it's situational. But, everybody's got their own plan or hopefully working on a plan. We have ours. We're happy to share ours with anybody throughout the country. We tell people, take a look at it, take what works and apply it. If it doesn't work, trash it. If it's just one thing out of ours that works for your community, then that's great. But we're not all built the same in our communities. We have different response models. We have different resources. We're on an island. If something big happens, we're in the middle of nowhere. We don't have Cal OEM coming to the rescue with departments neighboring all over, the seaside to get to us. We're all next in engine companies and resources. They're coming from California. So, we have to be able to go ahead and handle what we can. We do have the FBI here. We work well with them. Again, we train with all those agencies. But again, we're always looking for that next step forward to go ahead and increase our knowledge, skills, and abilities and our coordinated efforts. So when we do have a large-scale incident, that we really shine and everybody walks away knowing, hey, we did a good job because we were prepared.
How about you, Steve?
Our policy right now, we if the assailant's reported to be gone, then we're just dispatched and notified that it was an assault. The person's not there, and we respond right into the scene. If it's reported that it was an assault and the person is there, shooting, stabbing, then we stage a block away. And that's where having the police radio, comes in handy, where we can listen to first-hand information of what they're reporting on the scene. We can end up with very long staging times because we're responding code 3. Sometimes the level of the assault, it's not a high priority call for the police in our city. So that starts building some frustrations between fire and police where we're, and it's nothing to do with the troops on the ground. It's our response matrix and who's responding code 2 or 3. For those of you that don't use the term code 2 and code 3 for us is lights and sirens. Code 2 is just driving time. Our fire department doesn't go on code 2 calls, so we end up going code 3, so it's hurry up and wait, and sometimes it's waiting quite a long time before we can get an officer to, for something that's a lower priority call for them. But we can listen to the radio and be abreast of exactly what is going on.
Yeah. You know what, Daryl and Steve, when we talk about working with our counterparts in law enforcement, it's a whole approach. It's not just the law enforcement officer that's on the street. It's their communications division. It's their dispatch center. It's their chief officers. It's the sheriff or police chief. It's everybody from the top to the bottom, top down, bottom up. And interoperability is always going to be something that we struggle with. We have the ability to go ahead and get on channels that our law enforcement officers use. However, there's certain things that we don't need to know, nor do we really want to know when they talk on the radio. They have their specific tactics and procedures that they're going to follow. So it's a lot of white noise that we don't really necessarily need to hear. But I do understand your frustration when you're having to go ahead and stage and you don't know, and their communication division is not communicating with the fire dispatch and letting them know what the true situation is. So we have those same frustrations here. We try and address them through training. We bring our hospital folks in. We bring our dispatch personnel in from the fire and law enforcement side on all agencies, not school police, university police, military, everybody. We all have different dispatchers. So the communication, just like any other incident, large or small, that's the #1 problem. talking. Got to be able to communicate. So that's what we're doing here.
Well, and my department is currently, we're putting together a policy on mass casualty response to intentional acts of violence. So we have policies in place about responding to a scene of violence. If you respond to a scene of violence, you stage until law enforcement gets an opportunity to enter the scene and make an assessment. And I actually have a video through Penwell for fire engineering books and videos on responding to scenes of violence. That's the title of the video, where I talk a lot about these things. And one of the things we talk about is, as Daryl had mentioned, staging. I highly advise people, you respond code 1 to staging, because you're going to sit and wait. So why respond code 3 to an incident that you're going to sit and wait at? The distance between the fire station and wherever you decide to stage, you're going code 3 and you get into a traffic accident where somebody is severely injured or killed. I'm going to be upset at the end of the day. How I was rushing code 3 to sit and wait, and this incident occurred. So, but to each their own. Everybody does things a little differently. But as far as getting in touch with law enforcement, having communications and things like that, there are many NIOSH investigations where fire personnel were killed in an act of violence, and that's always one of the key things, is interoperability between agencies in the realm of communications. Brenda Callan was a lieutenant with the Lexington, Kentucky Fire Department, and she was killed, shot by an individual. And I speak about it in the video, I speak about it in my classes, where you see a filtering of information between the 911 call taker, the police dispatcher, and the fire dispatcher. And it is a massive amount of filtered information that resulted in them coming upon an incident where they were fired upon. And you have to look at how large is your law enforcement agency, how large is your fire department, what's the response time, and have a good working relationship with your law enforcement where you say, hey, I'm going to stage. And when fire stages, that means law enforcement goes code 3. Period. That's what that means. So you interact with your law enforcement entities and you let them know, if I'm staging, you need to come quickly because I'm not going in until you get here. And you increase their response level, and they'll start coming code 3. I've been in patrol cars where EMS has requested law enforcement, and the officer, first thing he asks is, do they need me emergent? And the dispatcher will, I don't know, hang on a second, and they got to talk to another dispatcher, and they got to type on a computer, hey, they got a question, and it goes back and forth, and no, they don't need you emergent. Then you get there, the ambulance is gone, you start asking questions, hey, where's the ambulance? Well, they had a combative patient, but they left. Yeah, that was emergent. You needed to get there emergently, and we need to increase that communication and that cooperativeness between both agencies, so that you can stage. I hear a lot of fire departments and firefighters say, well, if we stage, then the person's going to die, and I can't rely on law enforcement. Then talk to them, change the habit, change the behavior. Because the end result might be you get shot or you get stabbed, and I guarantee that your attitude will change dramatically after you've been shot at. Trust me, being shot at is not fun. You're not going to like it. So do something that changes that behavior. Don't accept it as the norm.
Yeah, our staging policy started because we had an engine company on the scene of a call. It was prior to me coming into the department, so I don't know exactly how the call came in. I understand it was something, a woman screaming, unknown medical is the likely way it came in, but she was running, the firefighters were still riding on the tailboard, and she's running towards the tailboard when she was shot by a man that could really care less that the firefighters were there. And right at the back of the engine. And we started a staging policy. And so one, it depends on the city or organization. We have no problem requesting police code 3. The problem is that our police agency is so busy and often understaffed that even if we want them code 3 and we're asking for them code 3 and it's their priority, there's so many priority calls also that we still may be in a position where we're waiting for them for a while longer than some of the slower communities around us. So that's a challenge that's hard to overcome. It does build frustration with the crews, and one thing that I think everybody should do is have a good relationship with their cops on the street, get to know them and know what they're dealing with. And it could just be inviting them for lunch and dinner, and chatting with them. They want to know what we're dealing with. We want to know what they're dealing with. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing, and that's public safety. So have them over for a meal, have a cup of coffee with them and just chit chat with them. It'll help improve relationships on the ground. They're promoting, and as they promote to their higher ranks, their sergeants and such, they're going to have a better understanding of what the firefighters on the ground are dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell people that when I teach classes, I tell them, when you are on a first name basis with the law enforcement officers in your region, there's nothing better than that. There really isn't anything better than being on that first name basis. As we were talking before we came on, and we were talking about traffic incidents, it's much easier for Bob, the patrol officer, to come up to Larry, the fire officer, and say, "Hey, Larry, how you doing? Hi, Bob, how's it going? Hey, can we get this road opened up pretty quickly? Yeah, man, let me. I'll do what I can. Hang on a second. Let me make a quick assessment and see if I can get you a lane." That's a very different conversation than Corporal Robinson coming up to Lieutenant Franklin and saying, "I need this road opened right away." Right. That's very, very different. It's a very, very different conversation. So whatever you can do to get that type of relationship, and as Daryl said, hey, we're gonna have burgers for dinner. You guys want to come over to the fire station for burgers? That's huge. That's massive. That is very huge way to bridge gaps between us and them. It really is.
One thing we did, and this is going to roll back to the active shooter program, and I don't know what other SWAT teams are doing. Our medical director, who is a doctor at our trauma center, Highland Hospital, and him working along with law enforcement and fire, we started a SWAT medic program. So we had a number of firefighters that are medics go through tactical training. They were learning how to shoot weapons tactically. It's not anything they're going to be doing at this time. We don't have firefighters carrying weapons in SWAT vehicles, but from my understanding that SWAT teams are almost how RIT teams were in the fire service. We want to implement something, but exactly how are we going to do it? So we lost 4 police officers in a day from it was a horrible event. 2 officers were shot at the scene, and that suspect fled to an apartment building. That turned into a SWAT standoff. 2 more officers were shot and killed. And I think, born of that, along with other active shooter incidents, that we decided to have medics along with the SWAT team. They wear armor and things like that. But part of the program is learning how to tactically use these weapons. On the street, medicine for those type of incidents is changing a bit. Rather than IVs and things, it's more just bulky dressing, stop the bleeding, get him into the tactical unit, which is an armored police vehicle, and out of the scene. So we had to start gearing medics' idea of how to treat like a shooting victim or a trauma victim, then what we traditionally are doing. It's about getting them out of the scene, stop the bleeding. And so we've had training citywide on tactical medicine for these incidents, and sent a number of medics through this tactical program. It's volunteer. They all had a great time. They all got to know our police officers better. Stories were shared, and that seems to be a good thing. I don't know what's going on in other parts of the country as far as that's concerned, but it's been a good thing here so far.
Here in Clark County, we have a program where they actually gave us tactical gear, Kevlar helmets, and what kind of vest did they give us?
Level 4 ballistic.
Level 4 ballistic vests. And we actually go in with the police officers who provide force protection to us. And Captain Hanna can expand on that. He was instrumental in implementing this program, so he can go into detail. We've got about 5 minutes left, so we'll let him go into detail on this program.
So what you were talking about, Daryl, with the SWAT and RIT teams, your analysis on that, RIT and SWAT, there's nothing rapid about SWAT or RIT. It's the people that are right there around the people that have the emergency that are going to be the ones that take care of it. So it's going to be your first arriving engine company, truck company. It's going to be your first arriving officers. That's what we decided our model works off of. So it's the first arriving officers that come in. They go ahead, they form a team, a strike team, and they're going to go ahead and they're going to hunt for that active shooter. Once they start giving those situation status updates, and our policy is not designed for a single-family residence, an apartment complex. It's for large, occupancies, buildings, federal buildings, movie theaters, hospitals, schools, multi-level structures, hotel, casinos. So once they go ahead and start giving that information, if law enforcement needs to send more strike teams in, they'll formulate those teams and send them in. Once it's relatively safe, we do the zones, the hot, warm, and cold. We'll operate the warm zone. We'll formulate a team. We have to have at least one paramedic on our fire side, and we go in as a coordinated team. We have at least 2 police officers and at least 3 firefighters. So we go in. We did secure the first Department of Homeland Security grant, the first fire department in the nation to go ahead and get that grant, which purchased all the gear for everybody, every single fire department in the valley. So not just Clark County. We did a multi-jurisdictional grant. So we have 6 departments, and we were able to outfit everybody with that. We also developed a hostile mass casualty incident bag. It's basically a very small, dumbed-down bag which talks about the injuries that you were just talking about. Extenuations, compressible hemorrhages, tension pneumothoraxes. That's down and dirty. We're talking 30 seconds of care. And cops are very good at that because they do buddy aid with tourniquets, self-aid, buddy aid. That's what we're doing. If we can have a bystander put a tourniquet on somebody to help their friend out, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to keep moving to the next person because we don't know who's worse. So as we continue to move in, it's not the cops in charge of that team. It's not the firefighters in charge of that team. It is a good relationship. Cops know about cover and concealment and the direction they want to go and the route they're going to take. I will never question that. But what I am going to do is say, I need to go over to that person over there. Take me over there. And then when bad stuff starts happening, they take the lead. I do not want them to put their gun down and go ahead and help stopping bleeding with somebody. I don't want that. We want them to be on gun, protecting us. We're operating in the bubble of safety that they provide, and then when we can go ahead and get these people out, we get them out. But we're operating in a relatively safe environment, not 100%, and then we go ahead and get them out to definitive care when we do our triage, treatment, and transport. So, everything is designed to be very quick, coordinated. Communication, again, is the highlight and foundation of what our policy is built upon, and we can only get better. As good as we think we are, every time we run an exercise or something, there's always something that rears its ugly head, and failure really goes ahead and kind of identifies the gaps and areas where we need to improve. So we look forward to that.
We have just a couple minutes left, guys. How about some final comments from you, Stephen?
Well, I was going to say, in relation to the active shooter and the rescue task force, which is essentially what you guys have done. Understand that the ability to formulate a rescue task force and do the things that you guys are doing in Clark County hinges upon your law enforcement and their strength and capabilities. 75% of the fire service is volunteer. So, not to say that volunteers can't do this, but when you get out into rural areas and you have maybe 3 law enforcement officers that are on road patrol in that area, when you have an active shooter event, such as you had at Sandy Hook, how long did it take to get enough officers there to enter the facility, identify and neutralize a threat, and then provide security for fire and EMS personnel to enter the building? You have to look at what numbers it takes to make that a reality, and can you realistically do that in 15 minutes or less? And if you cannot, you need to look at other avenues. And other avenues would be when you go out to schools and you do active shooter briefings and teachings to the staff, bring an EMT, take 15 minutes and show them how to make a hasty tourniquet. Show them how to seal a sucking chest wound with plastic material that's in their environment. If I can't get somebody to you to do threat principles, as the Hartford consensus had identified, I'm going to teach you how to do that by yourself. Teach your dispatchers to give that information over the telephone. A Sandy Hook teacher was on the phone with a dispatcher for 11 minutes before somebody could get into them. In 11 minutes, I can talk you through trying to do some of those things. So that white paper and that was put out by the Urban Fire Forum and then echoed by FEMA is great, but make sure that your department can support that. And if they can't, get dynamic and come up with other things. And if your fire department is a BLS fire department at best, or if not at all, understand that your role is to carry bodies to the colored tarps. That's what you do. That's your role. Now you have fire departments that are like, well, we need to do rescue task force, we need to do needle decomps, we need to do this, we need to do that. Know that there's an EMS entity that knows how to do that already sitting in the parking lot. Engage them. See if they're willing to be part of your rescue task force. They already have the knowledge. I don't have to teach them. All I have to do is teach them to work with law enforcement, wear body armor, and do tactical movements, which I'm going to have to teach to the fire department anyway. So know that that's not necessarily applicable everywhere. It's great if you can do it, but don't try to create a mousetrap that you can't possibly perform. Look at mutual aid. Look at your rescue task force security being from a law enforcement entity that is mutual aid. I get sheriff's departments from another county. I get city police from another jurisdiction nearby. Set up that they're going to be your rescue task force, because the people who are currently in their jurisdiction are going to be dealing with neutralizing the threat. Do things like that in order to accomplish what you want to do.
Great, Stephen. Thank you very much, brother. We're a little bit over, guys. I'd just like to thank everyone, all my brothers, for participating today. We didn't even need those other old guys, did we, Daryl?
No. Hey, and I just have one short closing comment, and that's just remember, police and fire, we have one thing in common, and that's we both want to be firefighters.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you to Keyhose, our very generous sponsor for these events. And any questions, feel free to contact Clark County Fire Department, Captain Hannah, or I'm sure you can call Daryl at home. He's home in his pajamas today. Once again, thank you very much, brothers. Take care.
Thank you.